Then the children of light will shine like the sun. Please be seated. One of my responsibilities, chief responsibilities in the family business where I grew up, was the actual casting of jewelry. The process of taking raw metal and placing it into a mold where it becomes a piece, an end product, a ring, a pendant, some sort of figure. The final part of production is about taking a mold that has been created and heated overnight, placing it into a centrifuge and lining it up with a crucible where metal, where alloy and pure gold are placed and melted. And at the right moment, activating the centrifuge, that the metal is flung into the mold. It's called centrifugal casting, for those of you that like words. Now, the tricky part of this whole process is the actual preparing of the gold and knowing when the gold, or silver or platinum, knowing when it's ready to be cast. When it's time to trip the centrifuge, because the metal is right. So you place the alloy in and you're working with this propane torch. It's all very hot because the overnight process of heating involves this large gas oven. So in the back room you're wearing these asbestos gloves and you're holding things with tongs and you're wearing protective gear, so it's very warm and it's very uncomfortable. And you're just working the torch over the metal, watching. Everything is lined up just right. You have a little powder called flux that you sprinkle into the crucible and helps burn off the impurities. Some of them left from when you used the crucible the last time. Some of them exist just because of touching the metal and the oil from your hands and just the impurities in the air all affect the readiness of the gold, the silver, or the platinum. So you're watching and waiting. You're agitating this crucible a little bit, shaking it around, moving the metal around, and a skin appears on the top of the molten mass. And your goal as the craftsperson is to watch and wait and work until that skin is burned off, until it dissipates, and you're left with gold, silver, or platinum right in front of you, fluid, right, ready, and clean. And when the moment comes, when you see that skin disappear and that molten metal shine, you hold steady with a torch and flip the switch. Centrifuge is tripped and the piece is born. Takes shape inside the mold prepared for it. Even though it's a process, that moment when the metal is ready, right, fluid, prepared, that's the critical moment. And if left to chance, if the metal is just a little too cool, it won't work. If it's a little too hot, the piece will be filled with bubbles that we call porosity in the jewelry business. And you can't polish the porosity out because the holes, the pits in the piece permeate it all the way through. So that moment has to be right. Jesus speaks about a process in this parable of the wheat and the weeds. Now, partially, this is an explanation for why the just and the unjust live together, and the unjust seem to thrive even though the Messiah has come. So Jesus is offering an explanation for why good and bad, why righteous and unrighteous, why lawful, law-abiding, and lawless live together side by side. But it's more than that also. It's about a future hope. It's about longing for a time when things will change, when the world will be different, and how that will be known. Now, it doesn't sound hopeful to most of us, I suspect, if you were listening closely. And I suspect if you were asleep or wavering there for a moment when we talked about fiery furnaces and weeping and gnashing teeth and binding and being thrown into the fire, I imagine you opened your eyes again, if only for a moment. It sounds a little scary. But we're not talking here in this text about a final kind of judgment. We're not talking about the different fates of believer and unbeliever. We're talking about a definitive moment of preparation in the life of the world. This portion of Matthew's Gospel addresses the removal of the barriers that keep us from living this life of faithfulness and righteousness. This parable looks to a time when God will intervene and remove the impediments that assail us. This isn't about belief and disbelief. This is about removing the barriers that keep us entrenched and lost and on the wrong path. You see, when we arrive at the scary sounding part, one piece of that is the angels. They will collect out of the kingdom all causes of sin. They will collect out of the kingdom all causes of sin. Now, if you dig beneath the surface of this causes of sin, you actually find something much, much more interesting. The literal rendering is something more like stumbling block than cause of sin. And if you really dig in, you find something even more specific than that. This cause of sin is really the mechanism that causes a trap to trip. You ever seen a rabbit gum? Does anyone know what a rabbit gum is? It's not rhetorical. You can shake your heads one way or the other. No? All right. Fair enough. Well, a rabbit gum is a box. I made one as a boy. It's a box trap that in the center of the trap you have a central post. And the central post has a stick that rides the top of the box. There's a hole in the back of the box drilled in with a stick and a string. And the stick is notched so that it hinges and hangs on the top of the box. Just very, very carefully. The other end has a string that holds the door that rides a kind of grid. So you put a little stuff in the back of the box, a little lettuce or whatever. I don't know what rabbits really eat. But you put that in the back of the box, and the rabbit walks inside looking for the treat and touches that stick just ever so slightly. stick swings, the balance is shifted and the door closes and you have a live rabbit in the box. Now I can tell you from personal experience, as an aside, it's tricky getting the rabbit out of the box. Very tricky. But this word, causes of sin, is as specific as that stick that causes the trap to trip. You see, the text envisions a time when God will remove the traps that assail us, the traps of the world, the distractions that exist, the obsessions we face. When those will be removed and we no longer will fall prey to them. The text anticipates the removal of all the hurdles that cause us to fall, to become distracted, and to fail to affirm the faith that resides within us. The furnace is less about destruction and is more about purification. The Bible often speaks of the furnace of fire and the refiner's fire. The refiner burns away the impurities, prepares the metal, waiting until the metal is ready, right, fully, and completely. What traps capture you? What concerns and obsessions lead you astray, distract you from the things of ultimate value? What part of you must give way that you might fully reside within the hands and arms of God? That you might embrace Jesus' way. It's always interesting when it's the rector's own child that's making the noise. She's 3 weeks old. We'll give her a break, right? Friends, God longs to remove the obstacles, the impediments that get in our way and that we allow to stay in the way. That longing and process of breaking the chains, removing the hurdles, is good news, because we can't do it alone. Friends, the good news is that we are not alone. God's ready for the moment when we're ready, when we're on that precipice, ready to be fully formed for the new life offered us in Jesus Christ.